You probably don't need the A9 III, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't be excited about it, because it's going to pave the way for a whole series of new cameras. It's a $6,000 camera. It's not attainable for everybody. If you have to somehow justify in your mind how you're going to be able to afford that, it's probably not a camera for you. This is the best that Sony is going to offer. It is the top tool that they're going to offer in their arsenal for photographers, for wildlife, for sports photography, for racing photography. People that need to capture moments that are happening very, very fast, and they're very hard to capture, generally speaking, anyway. The thing people don't understand with sports and wildlife photography is that moments happen once, and you have to be incredibly talented to anticipate when something is going to happen and be able to capture it with the right set of settings, knowing what's going on. It's very, very hard. This camera makes things a lot easier. It's going to level the playing field somewhat and make it generally more accessible and attainable for people to shoot those kinds of things. And some people will say that that's a bad thing. I stand by the position that it's actually a good thing, because when you level the playing field, historically speaking, what happens is it ups the quality level. I'll give you an example. A few years ago, to get a high quality looking video that you could put on YouTube took a lot of money, a lot of equipment. Now you can do it with your phone and a couple of lights, even a window. That's what I mean. When you level the playing field, the quality goes up. So we're probably going to start to see things that we really haven't seen before in the sports and wildlife world. We're going to see more of that start to trickle in. What Sony has done is technologically, they're the first. No one else has done this, and we're going to start to see more and more manufacturers now do this as well. Sony does sell their sensors to a lot of camera manufacturers, so you're going to see more and more cameras now that have global shutter. There's a ton of people out there that will explain and have explained what global shutter means, so I won't go into it in too much detail, but it is a big deal. It means you can capture everything all at once on the sensor. So there's no top to bottom, which typically we had before. So you don't see any rolling shutter now. A golf club isn't slightly bent when someone is swinging the golf club and it looks like the golf club has a lot of flex to it. It's not. That's your rolling shutter. You won't have that anymore. And there's a lot of misconception with the 120 frames per second about how it's taking the fun out of photography, and I very much disagree. If you think that you're going to be using this to take landscape photos and you've got to cull through 5,000 photos now, or you're taking pictures of your kids, it's not designed for that. It really is. When you hit that C5 button and you press the shutter, it kind of sounds like a bird. It's firing off so fast.
So to take advantage of the burst mode to get 120 frames per second, you have to hold this C5 button here. So if we hold that with my finger and then push the shutter, that is your 120 frames per second.
When you watch back on the back of the camera screen and you scroll in and you see all the motion that it captured, it's nothing I've ever seen before. It's pretty amazing. At the event Sony hosted, we were invited to, there was a ping pong player that I watched, and I'll put the video over the top here. You can literally see his eye track the ball perfectly, and these are all professionals that were there. It really unlocks a completely unique way of viewing things. Before 30 frames per second, that would be a quarter less than what you now have at 120. With that 120 now, you also have a pre-roll, which is kind of like pre-roll for video, where it's always recording, even when you hit the record button, it gets stuff before, like you can do on the FX6. Well, now you can do that for photography as well. So when you push or depress the shutter a little bit, you can set the time, anything from 0.1 to 1 second, it will shoot before. So if you think something is about to happen, but you're not entirely sure, you can slightly press the shutter, and then if it does happen, you captured it. That is a very useful feature for a sports photographer. Think someone that's anticipating a goal is about to happen in a football match, soccer for North Americans. Or you want to capture a golf swing as the ball gets hit. You're waiting for a baseball swing to come in and get the impact of that ball. Those things are going to be way easier to shoot now because you can shoot 120 frames per second. There's no worry that even at 30 frames per second, maybe between frames 27 and 28, you needed something in the middle there. You don't get it because it couldn't go fast enough. Well, now you will have that. 2024 Olympics coming up in Paris next year, and we will see lots of people using this camera, I guarantee it. This camera is very exciting for what's going to come, especially in the video sides of things. Imagine when this is in the FX3, the FX6, FX3 Mark II, FX6 Mark II, whatever ends up happening. You know that global shutter is going to be in these cameras. If you're a video shooter right now, this isn't really a camera you're going to be looking at. The A9 III isn't a video-centric camera. It has a one base ISO of 2000 compared to the base ISOs you have on an FX3 and A7S III, the FX6, where you have 800 and 12,800. That's way better. Those are still better cameras for video. This camera is fantastic for the future, what we're gonna see, and you should be excited about it even if you aren't getting one.